Maybe I've just found my new favorite series, or maybe to put it more correctly, one of my new favorite series, because there's a couple series that I'm very excited about lately. But the one I am talking about today that I am, yes, very excited about is the science fiction and fantasy series by Christopher Ruocchio, Empire of Silence, book one of the Sun Eater. So this book has kind of everything I am looking for in a series, which is as I'm slowly refining my tastes, and like many of you maybe watching this have gotten back into reading lately, looking for that next great read. I think maybe if you're influenced by similar things that I am, that you may find Empire of Silence right up your alley too. So my name is Zach. This is a science fiction and fantasy book review channel where I also sometimes go into other books like comics and manga and business and personal development, but yes, mostly science fiction fantasy. And Empire of Silence, book one of the Sun Eater, is that perfect blend of science fiction and fantasy. So to put it lightly, I am a big fan of Dune, was influenced by it growing up. I read it multiple times, read it as in the first six books multiple times growing up. Love the Dune world, have the posters, have figures, have the books. It's yeah, my all-time favorite probably series if I had to pick just one, because yes, it's a blend of science fiction and fantasy, because it, yes, takes place in space, and especially later books, there's more space elements. But if you've seen the Denis Villeneuve movies, it is very grounded in its politics. That, yes, there is the larger space world and empires and houses, but it takes place on planets. It follows people. It has those very familiar kind of fantasy tropes, even though, yes, it has elements like force shields and blasters and spaceships and things you equate with science fiction. And that's what I loved about, I think, Empire of Silence. It had a lot of elements of the familiar but maybe remixed and retold in ways that's a fresh take on the tropes and genres that I am looking for in a book. So to me, this really had maybe three influences that I'm equating in my mind to why I liked it. To the Dune reference, it's Book of the New Sun and The Expanse. It's, of course, these are all just top of mind for things I'm reading currently and loving currently, but I think that remix by Chris Ruocchio is really what made Empire of Silence work for me. So to recap it, what the book actually was, it has echoes of Dune. So I really felt like I was almost reading a Dune fan fiction at first. The setup is very familiar. If you've read the first Dune book, it has our main character, Hadrian, who starts off in a very Paul Atreides-like character, and it made me think that, are we just watching Paul's kind of upbringing from another angle? Because Hadrian is also in a noble house. He's a noble part of this family, which is a house on house galactic feudal empire like Dune. The house that Hadrian is part of, the Marlowe house, they control a limited resource in the universe. It's not spice, but it's uranium. So they're also atomics like in Dune. But then as the story goes on and we follow Hadrian and learn about his world in these early chapters, we start to see that maybe his father, which I thought was Leto Atreides, the noble, thinks about the good of the common man person, but he's actually more like Baron Harkonnen. And are we really following, like, what if Paul was raised by the Harkonnens? Because there's gladiatorial combats. He's a very evil, like, manipulative person who's only looking for glory for his house. And these like similarities kind of end there, even though there's echoes of Dune that I'll maybe talk about later. But as Hadrian's story starts, he has a mentor figure, which could be like a Gurney Halleck or a Duncan Idaho. But this mentor figure that I really loved, again, maybe because of the echoes of character tropes that I love from the Dune universe, and things happen to be a little bit vague and non-spoilery, but eventually Hadrian leaves his home planet, escapes from the clutches of these royal upbringing, and he sets out on his own adventure. And these early chapters really establish the world. Hadrian is this very kind of arrogant, noble child. I think this was written for that reason by Ruocchio, because that's what Hadrian is. And this is maybe where I'll stop and talk about the second influence that I immediately noticed. And upon finishing the book and reading or watching YouTube interviews with Chris Ruocchio, who seems like, yes, a really cool dude, but he talks about how Book the New Sun by Gene Wolfe was an influence. And the whole setup for the series of Sun Eater, we start at the very beginning to go, I guess maybe back a bit, is that we hear Hadrian talking to us, the reader, that this is his story about how he became the Sun Eater, how he destroyed a sun, a star in the future. So this is his story told backwards from way in the future because due to genetics, he has a super long life that we learned. So it's not any kind of weird time travel thing. It's just he's genetically altered to live a long life. But we learn that at the end of this journey, he's going to destroy a sun, kill tons of hundreds, millions of people. But this is his looking back. And that's what really echoed me about the Severian from Book of the New Sun, that Severian is this unreliable narrator. He's telling his story at the end of the saga, looking back at how he was, his upbringing in the world of Earth on the Book of the New Sun. So that like kind of plot structure, narrative structure, I guess, is what I really enjoyed. And also the fact that Hadrian isn't quite as unreliable as Severian is. Severian has a very distinct, I guess you could say, prose style where he skips over things and tells points that only he connects to, whereas Chris Ruocchio has Hadrian give a more flowery description. Sometimes I feel maybe over describes certain scenes, but I'm also equating in my mind that maybe this is just Hadrian again filling in the blanks of his story because he's telling this so far in the future that I guess he couldn't probably, maybe through genetics, that he couldn't possibly remember all these minute details that he's describing. So maybe it's just him, expanding a little bit, being a little flowery in his writing as he writes his memoir, this book, not Book of the Sun, but this Sun Eater saga. So with that said, as we kind of see these echoes, the plot sort of really, he starts at Noble House and then he slowly kind of loses his status as he escapes and he lands through some circumstances on another planet from his home planet, but still in the main kind of human civilization solar system. And he has to start from the bottom and kind of reclaim his, I guess, humanity or his sense of purpose as he figures out himself. And we see that character growth where he goes from this, again, noble in this bubble society of nobles, and then he has to kind of live with the common man. Again, echoing a bit the Paul Atreides arc where Paul leaves his house, not by choice, but he also leaves his house with a Harkonnen attack. You've seen, of course, the Dune movies by Denis Villeneuve, but he leaves the house and then has to restart and reestablish himself with the Fremen. So there are a bit of parallels there where Hadrian has to reestablish himself and he grows as a character through these trials. But this is where the book really picks up. This is maybe like the first third, but then we get to that kind of the first half as Hadrian is getting along in his journey. He's reestablishing himself, but that's when the world starts opening up, and that like kind of halfway turning point when it gets into the third influence that I loved and equated this to is when the book really started clicking for me. And that's the third, like the second half of the book and the third influence, which is The Expanse by, James A. Covey. So, The Expanse, I felt the influence here is because I really felt like it was the protomolecule. And maybe, again, I haven't read all of The Expanse, so I don't know how true the parallels are. But in the second half of Sun Eater, and what the coolness of it was that you have the humans, human civilization, which is, there are other kind of like races of people in our solar system, but there's also aliens. So I didn't talk about that yet. And it kind of echoes into book 5 and 6 of Dune, where you have the honored maters coming back and kind of attacking human civilization. So I don't know if this is parallels there, but if you've read Dune, after God Emperor, we get a huge time skip with the scattering and humanity spreads out among the stars. And then we see them coming back to the solar system after the scattering. And that's, in my mind, maybe the parallels a bit because we see this external threat finally influencing our society. So you have these aliens that humanity is at war with in Sun Eater. So there is another kind of threat besides just the house on house politics. And this could be just general fantasy tropes, right? It's kind of empires and now a foreign country is invading. So you have this, similar kind of plot structure. But the Expanse piece that I loved and I thought was just the coolest and why I'm definitely continuing on is now there's a third player kind of in the game, in the world, because you have an ancient alien civilization that left these remnants on the planet. So Hadrian, through his adventures, kind of teams up with an archaeologist, and they're examining the ruins that are left by this ancient alien civilization. And again, the really cool thing and why it kind of ties into both Book of the New Sun and Dune is there's also a religious connotation to these ruins, and there's like a religious society that's controlling information about the nature of the ruins. So it has this kind of conspiracy vibes, but then you're also trying to figure out what even are the builders of this civilization, the quiet. So it's a really cool plot device that just kind of gets my mind going of, again, I'm already thinking about all these theories of what could it be? What could it mean? Is it similar to Dune? Is it something else like the proto-molecule? How does it all connect? Are the aliens that are attacking, are they the Cielans? Are they connected to the humans somehow? Are they like humans from the future or the past? Are they just another race that's somehow also caught up in this like cycle with the ancient aliens? And now you have all these factions. And that's where, again, as you probably can tell by me enthusiastically talking about it, that's when the world expanded. We start learning more. And I really got drawn into the world building that Ruocchio is created here with Sun Eater Saga. I think it's really cool. It's not just humanity, it's other races, it's ancient aliens, but it is still grounded with our character Hadrian and the kind of interpersonal relationships he has with the friends he made along the way, the other players in his own house. So he's got the feudal politics. You've got himself in humans at this era, sort of genetically modified. So we know he's going to live a long life. He has kind of power-esque powers, I guess you could say, but not like superpowers yet, at least yet so far. I don't know really where we're going with some of these body modifications, but there are, again, it's technology, but it could be kind of almost fantasy magic, but not really. But that's kind of the equation, how it's kind of this blend of science fiction and fantasy. It's set in space. There's space faring, but it also could be just regular feudal society fantasy world. So again, these are all the elements and all the tropes and themes and ideas that I really loved. And as you can hopefully tell, I'm really loving how Ruocchio has kind of mixed this all together into something new, something fun with echoes of familiar. So I'm definitely grounded in the story. My mind can grab onto what they're talking about, and I am invested. I am really excited to see the rest of Hadrian's journey, how he becomes the Sun Eater, how he destroys a star, where he's going at the end of book one. And if you can get through some of the slower parts of book one, I think you'll really enjoy the journey he goes on. Like most books, me included, not every book is going to hit. I didn't really get into Wheel of Time, even though I gave it 4 books. I didn't really get into Red Rising, but like, for example, those are 2 series I know has its super fans. And I think Empire of Silence and Sun Eater is one of those as well. I can see why people may not like some of these slower parts, but if you like Dune, if you like The Expanse, especially if you liked Book of the New Sun, I think all these elements together with other kind of classic science fiction fantasy tropes, you're really going to enjoy Empire of Silence by Chris Ruocchio and the rest of the Sun Eater saga. I know I have already put in my hold from the library for Book 2, Howling Dark. And from the early reviews and people talking about the series, this is the worst book. So if I enjoyed the worst book, I know it's only going to get better from here, and I cannot wait to continue reading Sun Eater. So thanks for watching this review of my thoughts and feelings and a quick brief synopsis of Sun Eater. I give it an easy 5 out of 5, 10 out of 10. I thought it was a really great start to the series because even though technically maybe it was not 100% perfect, it has all the elements to make me excited, and my enjoyment factor really overrides my numerical rating and gives it kind of a perfect score because I am really excited to continue reading, and that is ultimately what I look for in a series. Am I excited about it? So thanks for watching and have a great day.